Hello, good afternoon once again. You're welcome to stay part of our educational technology lessons. Today we are dealing with the functions of educational technology. In dealing with the functions of educational technology, I have asked people, students, what are the functions? And sometimes I hear that it concretizes knowledge, it motivates learners, and so on. And I ask, if these are the functions of educational technology, then what are the functions of media in education? Is educational technology the same as educational media? No. Educational media is one little aspect of educational technology. Like we dealt with it when we're looking at the definition. If we have a white circle, educational media will be one little aspect of it. And we have educational technology still. One little aspect is audiovisuals. So, why do we equate the functions? But what are the functions of educational technology? First of all, we say educational technology emphasizes the specification of objectives. It emphasizes the specification of objectives. What are objectives? Objectives are statements of intended outcome, and they are necessary in everything we do in life. They are statements expressing what we want to achieve in the course of doing something. With education, they are statements expressing what we want to achieve, what we want our learners to achieve by various activities, content, and so on, that they are involved in the educational system. So specification of education objectives is very important. What are educational objectives? We say there is society's philosophy of life translated into action achievable through education. And what do we mean by philosophy of life? Philosophy of life of a society are those things a society values. Those things a society values. And it's those things that we want to continue. That's what we mean by translated into action. But in this case, they are achievable through education. Educational objectives are statements indicating what a learner will be able to do, feel, write, think by the end of an activity, be it the entire educational system or just a lesson taught by a single teacher. And we have several types of educational objectives. We have general objectives, we have intermediate objectives, we have specific objectives. General objectives are the intended outcome of the entire educational system of a country. The entire educational system of a country. Nigeria is a country and it has general objectives. Then intermediate objectives are intended outcome of various levels and subjects within the educational system. We have English, we have maths, we have chemistry, biology, history. What are the reasons each of these individual subjects are put in the educational system? That's what intermediate objectives are. Specific objectives are the intended outcome of every lesson or activity that learners participate in. And what are the general objectives of Nigeria? What are those statements of intended outcome of our entire educational system? What are those things we are expected to achieve through education in Nigeria? There are 5 of them. What are the educational objectives of Nigeria as a country? Because these are what the general objectives of Nigerian education are. There are 5 of them. They used to be 4, but sometime in 2013 they were increased to 5. And what are they? We say they are development of the individual into a morally sound, patriotic, an effective citizen. So, If we're talking about patriotic, is Nigeria as a country achieving patriotism through education? Do you think we have patriotism? Maybe to some extent, because people still go to represent Nigeria in football, in sports and all that. But generally, when you look at the way the country is abused online, you wonder, are we patriotic? The effective citizenship means citizens that are useful, that contribute to the society. Are we developing citizens that are effective? The second objective says total integration of the individual into the immediate community, society, and the world at large. So, the educational system should help us integrate us into our immediate community, the Nigerian society, and the world at large. The education we receive should be in a way that wherever we find ourselves, we fit in without problems. Whether it's our communities or whether we leave the country, we shouldn't have a situation whereby we do not understand the language of our immediate community. How do we integrate into our immediate community? By learning the language of the immediate community, like the National Policy on Education has rightfully said, that children from nursery to primary 3 should learn their mother tongue, the language of the community. But do we do that? Our third objective is provision of equal access to qualitative educational opportunities for all citizens at all levels of the educational system, whether it's in the formal system or informal system. So we should have a situation whereby whether you're poor, you're rich, female, male, should have equal access to what? Qualitative, good education. Are we achieving those objectives? Our fourth objective says inculcation of national consciousness, values, and national unity. Are we united as a country? Can you see somebody of another tribe and take him as a human being rather than an Igbo man or Hausa man or Yoruba man or Krika man or Kalabari man? Do we have national consciousness? Do we have knowledge of our environment, the things that happen in our country, for us to be aware of why people do things, protect it and all that? Then finally, the development of appropriate skills, mental, physical, and social abilities for us to live in and contribute positively to the society. Our objectives helping us to develop positively to the society. Those are objectives. Are they being achieved? So we have these objectives, and then we have the intermediate ones and the specific ones. But in achieving our objectives, let's look at the general objectives. Are the general objectives of Nigeria as a nation that are clearly stipulated in our national policy on education being achieved? If they are not being achieved, then we have a need. And because we have a need, we have a problem. So that brings us to our second objective or second function. Educational technology identifies and solves existing educational problems. I'm emphasizing the word existing because a lot of people have said that educational technologies generate problems for the educational system. No, we do not generate problems. But in the process of solving one problem, there is a tendency to unveil other existing problems that lie underneath. That a child in secondary school cannot read does not mean that his problems of reading are in the secondary school. we look at our national policy on education, which I hope we all have, it is not the business of the secondary school to teach the child reading and writing. It is the business of the primary school. So if the secondary school child cannot read and so is not passing his subjects, the problem does not lie with the teacher of the class where he's failing the subject, does not even lie with the secondary school. It lies at the primary school. And there might be lots of other problems that are connected to that problem. Why was the child not able to read in primary school? Were there teachers? Were there books? Was there enough time? Were there activities for the learner to engage in? Because we have a need in that case, certain things are not happening right, then we can identify the problem. So educational technologies are interested in emphasize identification of problems. And what is a problem? For us to understand what a problem is, we first have to understand what a need is. A need is a discrepancy between what is and what is required. We want effective citizens that are morally sound, that are patriotic. We don't get that. So there is a need. The problem there is the requirement to turn that discrepancy into what we want. So what are we going to do for our citizens to be effective, for them to be patriotic, for them to be morally sound? That is the problem. You cannot identify a problem without solving it. So if we're identifying, we're also looking for ways of solving that problem. Thirdly, we are concerned or interested in how problems are identified and solved. How do we solve these problems? How do we identify these problems? How do we solve these problems? What is our approach to identifying a particular problem? How do we know the exact cause of the problem? For instance, you, as a human being, you have a headache, and you want to find solutions to that headache. But for you to find the right solution, you have to know the right cause of the headache. A headache can be caused by sleeplessness, stress, overwork, overfeeding, underfeeding, and anything in any part of the body manifests in headache. But for us to solve that problem, how do we know how we got that headache? Do we just start drinking tablets because we have paracetamol available? We might have to go to a doctor that will prescribe rest, prescribe some tests and all that. All he's doing is to find out the exact cause of the headache so that we can apply the right solution. It's only when we identify the exact problem that we can apply appropriate solution. And the same goes to our educational system. The student that is failing or can't read, what are the reasons? How do we identify the reasons why he can't read? Do you just wake up and say, no, these are the problems? We've had those situations. Somebody woke up and said, oh, if we have mother tongue, then all our problems are solved. Is that what we do? How can we solve these problems? How? The answer and solution to all these problems, what and how, is what will help us to identify the right problem and the ability to solve these problems. When we have identified the problem, we'll go on to do what? Plan and design instruction. We'll go on to plan and design instruction. So we're going to plan and design instruction. But because the aspect of planning and designing instruction is very wide, I have put it as a totally different topic. When we identify a problem, and how do we go to solve those problems? We plan and design instruction. What is instruction? We say it's information deliberately planned to broaden the knowledge of the learner. Instruction is information deliberately planned to broaden the knowledge of the learner. So from our knowledge of what the objectives are and why the objectives are not being achieved and all that, we put that information and we use it to what? Plan and design our instructional system. So we design instruction. And the purpose of designing instruction is what? To broaden the knowledge of the learner. When we are designing instruction, we use instructional design. What is instructional design? It's a practice of arranging content and media to facilitate learning. How do we put around all our resources, the content we have, that we have put in based on the objectives we have stated, based on the problems we identified. So how do we put it together with our media, instructional media, to facilitate learning? So that is what we do in planning and designing instruction. We arrange our content and media to facilitate learning. So the purpose of planning and designing instruction is to determine what should be done in the course of our program. We don't just wake up and just do it. Just like as teachers, we make lesson plans before we go to class. We plan our instruction so that we know what we will do in the course of the program. So that if we're applying it, we know whether it's working or not. We take into consideration the needs of the society, from the failures of not achieving the objectives. What are the needs? The characteristics of the learners, available resources, the needs of the society. We take them into consideration. And in doing planning, we eliminate likely inhibitions to the effectiveness of the learning system. Then we use various instructional models to plan. Like our definition of education says, is what? Systematic what? Application. Systematic means that we don't just do things haphazardly. We plan, use a step-by-step procedure. And in doing that, we use what? Instructional models. What are instructional models or instructional design models? They are a visual and verbal description of a system, theory, or phenomenon that accounts for all its known and inferred properties. For all its known and inferred properties. That means the known properties and the known properties we do not know. And it may be used for further study of the characteristics of that model. It's an instructional design model. Is a visual or verbal description of a system, theory, or phenomenon that accounts for all its known and inferred properties and may be used for further study of its characteristics. So we write out the design in a verbal form or in a visual form, and we expose all the aspects of that system so that we can study them, analyze them, and use them effectively. Why are models, instructional models, important? They help to break down problems into discrete manageable units. They make the problems easier for us to understand. It offers us as users a way to comprehend a problem with more ease. We're able to comprehend because it's been broken down into all its various parts. Can comprehend it with more ease. It gives us structure and gives meaning to the instructional problem. And in doing that, it equips the designer and learner with tools that can visualize the problem. So we can look at the model and say, okay, this is where we need to tackle, and this is where we need to tackle. It helps the instructional designers and learners to make sense of the instruction they're learning. And one of the most common models, or generic original model, structural model that is used, is what we call ADDIE. ADDIE. ADDIE is an acronym for Analyze, Design, Develop, Implement, and Evaluate. ADDIE. ADDIE. Analyze, Design, Develop, Implement, and Evaluate. When we are analyzing, what are we doing? We identify the problem. We look at the objectives. We look at the society. We look at the learners. What are the issues? What are the needs? What are the discrepancies? Why are they not being achieved? So we identify the problem. Then we design. From those problems we have identified, we set new objectives. We specify our objectives. This is what we want. We determine content. We determine the strategies to achieve these objectives. Then we develop the content. If we have to produce instructional materials or acquire instructional materials, buy them, whatever, is at the development stage we do it. We develop the content. Then we implement. After developing, we implement. Because if we not implement, we won't know whether it's useful or not. So we use the developed plan. And then, whenever we have objective, we say we always evaluate. So the E stands for evaluation. And we are evaluating, your gathering information in order to what? Make decisions whether to keep, change certain aspects, or to discard the program. And these models, ADDIE models, from ADDIE we have very many other models. And the models can be classified into 3 types. We have classroom-oriented models, which are models that are used by a single teacher. Like we have the Assure model, and we have our traditional lesson plan. It's also an instructional model. As teachers, know that when you're teaching, you have to write your lesson plan and you have laid down procedures to follow. Objectives, entry behavior, instructional materials, and so on and so forth. That is a classroom-oriented model. Then we have product models. These days with modern technology, we don't do everything about schooling in a classroom, about formal schooling in a classroom. Sometimes we do it online. And in doing it online, there is no teacher there most times. We can use an instructional software, instructional package. When we do those things, we use the product-oriented model. And product-oriented models are produced for when there is no teacher in the classroom guiding you, so that they can be used by the individual on his own. For instance, you're using things like U-lesson. There is no teacher there teaching you, even though there is a teacher online. So you have to guide yourself on how to use it or not. So that's a product-oriented package. Then we have the systems-oriented models. Of course, we know that a system is a sum total of parts working individually and in conjunction with others. When you say it's a system-oriented model, that means there's more than one teacher. There's more than one classroom. So a system-oriented model is a model that is used by more than one teacher. For instance, if NUC, our recent NUC package, the CC mass or the B mass that was just changed, that's a system-oriented model. So it's for the whole system, not one person. So the next objective we have is that educational technology explores and structures content. Explores and structures the content, or what we call the subject matter. Why? Because there are changing needs and objectives. the needs of the Nigerian society at the introduction of education are different from what they were now. At that time, what people just wanted to read and write, but now it's much different. Our objectives, even only recently, have changed from 4 to 5. So needs are changing, objectives are changing. There is changing knowledge or increased knowledge. As knowledge is changing, we have to also include the new knowledge into the content. Before this time, we used to hear that an atom was the smallest indivisible particle. But now nobody teaches atom as the smallest indivisible particle. We talk of protons and neutrons and electrons. These new findings have to be put into the school system. Before this time, in history classes, we used to, as a primary school child, we studied ancient history, and we used to talk of hieroglyphics and Mississippides and Philippides and Athens and Greece. Now nobody does that in primary school history. Now we talk about what? History of Nigeria. We talk about knock culture. We talk about local industries. And before this time also, history for some time, for 13 years, was removed from the school curriculum. Now it's back there because we are beginning to see the need of history again that we thought we didn't need. And then there are changing learners. As learners change, the type of learners, their characteristics, their age. Before this time, in the days of our fathers and grandfathers, they used to do learn a lot of letter writing application letters, because immediately they finished primary school, they were expected to go and get jobs, because most of them went to school 12, 13, 14. By the time they finished 8 years of primary school, at 14, they're already 22, they are adults. So they taught them things that will enable them get jobs. But now we have children of 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. A lot of children, by the time they leave primary school, they are 8, 9, 10. Are we going to teach them the same content? No. There is also changing technology. As a primary school child in the 70s, there was no computer, at least in our environment. But now, you cannot teach properly in the school system without teaching children with computers or teaching them to use the computers. Imagine a lot of them in their homes, they have computers, and they come to school and they don't learn to use computers. They won't want to come to school again. Now we are doing all kinds of collaboration and cooperative learning and all that because of the technology available that enables you to collaborate and cooperate online without much problems. So we constantly explore to see what is available so that we can see what to add and what to use to meet our needs. Then, educational technology emphasizes the use of the most appropriate method and media. Most appropriate method and media. And in looking at the most appropriate method and media, we are thinking of our learners' characteristics, their age, their abilities, their disabilities. We are looking at, for instance, I have learners that are 4 years. What method am I going to use for my 4-year-old children? Am I going to use the lecture method? We call a lecture method deals with using oral, talking about things. So whatever I'm teaching, I just talk about it, oral presentation of ideas. My 4-year-old child in school, that is my learner. Is that how I want to teach the child? Is the child's mental development up to a stage where I can just say, oh, we are talking about fish, or we are talking about orange, and the child understands what it is? No. So if I'm teaching that child, I want to teach him with things that he will be actively involved with. And in doing that, I'll be using like the activity method. I want him to be involved. I want him to touch things. And if I'm using the activity method, what will be the most appropriate media? Real things. Real things. So if I'm talking about orange, I'm talking about mango, I should show that child the mango instead of using charts. I should show that child the orange. If you're talking about pineapple, I should bring the pineapple, cut it, let them smell, taste, feel, and all that. If I'm talking about the concept of something being soft, I should give them something to squeeze to show that it is soft. And then I should give them something to squeeze to show that it is strong. So the facilities have to be there. But the real things can only be the appropriate media for my using the activity method if there are real things available. What if I have to teach my learners about mango and there is no mango available because mango is in season? Right now, the season of mango, this is 26th June 2014. It's no longer mango season. You hardly see mango on the road. Will using realia still be the most appropriate media to use? Is using the activity method still be the most appropriate media to use when the facilities are not available? Whether something is appropriate or not is also determined by the availability of resources. If resources are available, then activity method is the most appropriate. If the mango, for instance, in this case is not available, what I might have to do is show them a picture of the mango. Then the activity method is no longer the most appropriate because I'm just showing them picture. Maybe it's demonstration method or lecture method. So using the most appropriate method is relative on the learner's characteristics and the learning resources available. For instance, we say that it's better to use visuals than to just use audio. But if my students are blind means that they can't see. Are visuals still the most appropriate media to use? No. They can't see, they can't hear. So anything that has to do with the sense of hearing becomes the most appropriate. If my students are deaf, will talking, discussion method, for instance, where they will contribute, be the most appropriate method to use? No. I have to look for visuals to use. So that's where concept most appropriate is relative on availability of resources and learners' characteristics, age, abilities, disabilities, and so on and so forth. Then we plan the learning environment, but because the concept of planning the learning environment is very wide, I have made it a different lesson so that we can thoroughly look at it. So we won't go into much into talking about learning environment, but we know that learning environment is anywhere teaching and learning takes place, and there are two types: physical and social. So please refer to the second part of this lesson to learn about learning environment. But we'll talk about the last function, which is the educational technology evaluates the effectiveness of the learning system. Effectiveness means to evaluate how functional, how successful the learning system we have planned is. And what is evaluation? Evaluation, we say, is the process of obtaining data or information about a program for the purpose of determining the success of or otherwise, in order to make decisions about whether to maintain the features of the program or suggest a more effective alternative. We are gathering information in order to make decisions to keep, discard, or suggest a more effective alternative. And in evaluating, what are we doing? Determine whether set objectives, learning environment, methods, materials are the right ones to use knowledge gained to improve the effectiveness of the learning system. And there are three types of evaluation: diagnostic, formative, summative. Diagnostic evaluation comes before the program, and we're asking, for instance, are these the right students to be in that program? Are these the right teachers to be in that program? Has the program been successful? So diagnostic evaluation comes up before the program starts. Formative evaluation comes up at the beginning of the program and in course of the program. So as we are planning our program, we are seeing whether the things we have planned, for instance, at various steps, are the right ones. Summative evaluation is evaluation that comes up at the end of whatever program we have done, to find out whether everything we have decided on are successful. Are they the right ones? So this program that we have finally decided, should we continue it? Should we change it? Should we keep parts of it and leave parts of it? So this is the end of our first part of the functions of educational technology. Please don't forget to watch out for the second part, and don't also forget to follow us on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and everywhere. Please share, subscribe, comment. If you comment on the problems you have areas, then we know how to go about improving it. Thank you very much. Remember, it's Exploring the Educational Field with Dr. Omieibi-Davids. Thank you very much.